Keen-eyed listeners amongst you will notice I have changed vehicle again. I'm back in the Giulietta, which has come back from the airport in one piece. Lovely. Now, last week I said that the government grant of this 3,750 quid you could get off a milk float was just bollocks. And then slowly they've drip-feeded little bits of information on how you qualify for this grant. So I thought I'd have a look at it this morning and see actually what's involved in it. And what I've discovered is, you'll be amazed, a steaming pile of shit. It's when I used to work, this comes as a shock to a lot of you. When I used to work in education, I had a lot to do with EU funding and EU grants and all the money that trickled down from that. And the one thing I learned overriding over everything else was, if you got 3 million off the EU, 1 million of it would end up doing what it was intended to, and the other 2 million would disappear in various government people as the money came from the EU to Britain and then was distributed from Britain to England, and then from England down to the southwest, then from the southwest down to Devon and Cornwall, then from Devon and Cornwall down to Cornwall. Every time another agency with a lot of letters in its name taking a bit more. And naturally, I got sceptical about this and rather teasy about it, and then realised that it was absolutely pointless, and it was just literally one pot of money funding another pot of money, funding another pot of money, funding another pot, job creation. And these people, I used to call it the magic roundabout, because all they do, and there's loads of them, I could name names right now of the 10 people in Cornwall that have literally made millions through being on the funding roundabout. And all they do is switch from organisation to organisation, and they keep going around in a circle, and they keep pulling off 6-figure salaries, and then when that money runs out, they move on to the next one, and another load of money comes down. The car industry is no different, because it's full of government departments. Now, I'm going to read to you the government departments that you have to satisfy criteria for to qualify for this grant. Now, it obviously comes from the Department for Transport. That's one. But then you're going to need to go to the Vehicle Certificate Agency. Me neither. And, of course, the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles. If that isn't job creation, I don't know what is. What does that do that the other two don't do? The answer, fuck all. But nevertheless, it's employed another 1,000 civil servants who will no doubt vote Labour at the next election, because otherwise they'd be turkeys voting for Christmas. But then, of course, you're going to need to satisfy the Science-Based Target Initiative. Now, if anything was just bollocks, that sentence is just bollocks. But it doesn't matter, because then there's the International Energy Agency, because that's obviously an international as opposed to a national. So you got to do that. Then there's the World Manufacturer Identifier, which is part of your VIN, but a separate part of the VIN, not the main part of the VIN. Again, just job creation. Then you're going to need a certificate of conformity. And then you're going to need an individual vehicle approval certificate. So that's the DFT, the VCA, the OZEV, the SBTI, the IEA, the WMI, the COC, and the IVAC. I mean, quite frankly, why you can't just mix all of them into one agency called the CNUC. Can't even say it. Ruin that punchline. One agency. Right, pretend you didn't see that bit. Why we can't just amalgamate all those into one agency called the CUNTSs? That would be a lot easier, wouldn't it? Fucking ruin that. Never mind. Anyway, so the procedure for a motor manufacturer to get this grant so that he can then not discount his car as much and use the government grant to discount it instead, benefiting you by absolutely nothing, but however benefiting them by 3,750 quid of your money. So far, the net benefactor here is not you. All those agencies are going to benefit because they'll have to be paid for that production of a certificate. So they're all benefiting. So there's 8 government quangos that are benefiting straight away, plus the motor manufacturers, plus the dealers. The only people not benefiting so far are the people that paid for the discount, which is us. So I'm just going to use the acronyms now, all right? Because this will take a week otherwise, and quite frankly, it's quite boring, so I'll skip through it. You apply to the DFT via email, and then to do that, you must own an SBTI. And then, once you get approved by the DFT, you can then apply to be assessed by the DFT and the VCA. If you're successful, then you have to fill in an application form, and that's assessed by the VCA and the OZEV. Then you need a science-based target, whatever that is, which is issued by the SBTI. Then you need an emission certificate. You get that from the IEA. Then you need to prove where your car was assembled. Now, you need the VIN, and that needs a WMI code, and then a COC or an IVAC. Nothing. And then you need to prove where it's manufactured. Now, the definition of manufacture is very specific. It's where the powertrain, that's the sewing machine engine. Remember a mechanic who used to get his little engines that you could link up to a PP3 battery with 2 bits of, and it gave, and it'd power your little forklift with an elastic band. Bigger version of that. Where the powertrain is joined to the chassis. So, what this means is, if your car is made in China, or in fact any Asian country, you can only qualify for half the grant anyway, because for some reason it's not considered environmentally friendly to build cars in Asia, according to the government, because their green credentials aren't good. Who would have thought? It's not as if anyone's been banging on about the fact that China have got all these coal-fired power stations and it's not as green to build your cars over there, and actually it's not very environmentally at all to buy them over there. The government has just admitted it. So they've ruled out the whole of Asia. You ain't getting the full grant if you've got an Asian car. So, but if it's made in Britain, i.e. the powertrain is connected to the chassis in Britain, Europe, or in fact anywhere else but Asia, it's a bit discriminating, because there's plenty of places. I mean, you could get them made in Brazil. It'll be just as far away. So it can't be distance, can't be carbon footprint. It's got to be down to green credentials. Anywhere else in the world, as long as your powertrain's connected to the chassis in that country and not in Asia, then you qualify. What it doesn't state is that you could have the powertrain and the chassis built in China, ship them over in 2 separate boxes, and then just put them together in a factory, and you qualify. Which makes it just bollocks. However, because you rule out Asia straight away from this grant, you can knock off the following manufacturers: BYD, GWM, no, me neither, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Maxus, MG, Nissan, Omoda, Suzuki, Toyota, and as you can see, they're all in alphabetical order, and then I realised I've missed some, Lexus, Leap, and indeed Volvo, because they're owned by Geely, and most of it's built in China. Not that they have many milk floats under 37 grand anyway, because here's the other bit. The RRP, including everything on the road, must be no more than £37,000. Which knocks out instantly Audi, BMW, Supra, Cupra. It does, however, allow in a few left. And those few are mainly Stellantis cars. Citroen, DS, Fiat, Jeep, Peugeot, Vauxhall. As I have covered many, many, many times, these are largely shit and must be avoided at all costs, because they are some of the worst electric cars on the road. So then you've got, in Germany, Skoda and VW. I've covered them before. The VWs are no better. They're awful cars to drive. How the hell they're selling any of them, I don't know. So that's them out. So you are left with, for under 37 grand on the road, not manufactured in China, not made by Stellantis, not made by VAG Group. I've narrowed it down to 4 cars. They are the Ford Puma, the Mini Electric, the Renault 4 or 5, the Renault 4. This is progress. The Renault 4 or the Renault 5. Now, the Renault 5, I think, is a decent looking thing. if you had the Renault 5 Turbo, which of course you won't for less than 37 grand. So it becomes pointless. So that's out. Or the Dacia Spring. Was the cheapest car on the road until Leap Motor produced a big steaming pile of shit that you can currently see on my Facebook page for 14 grand. And I mean, this thing, I'm surprised this car hasn't been deposited into the sea by one of the water companies privatised in Britain right now, because it's that shit. And that's what they do with it. So any minute now, you will see Leap Motors just drifting around on the shore in amongst some foam and some seaweed. And these Leap Motor cars will be there because they are just big piles of shit as well. So for 37 grand, you can have a Ford Puma, a Mini, a Renault 5 or a Dacia Spring. And those are your choices to qualify for the £3,750 grant. I mean, it's hard work, isn't it? However, it's not all bad. Because if you've got 37 grand that you want to spend on a car, I've got some alternatives for you. And they're very simple. They're all German. And they are as follows. For 37 grand, you can buy a 5-year-old one of these with about 50,000 on the clock. So just running. RS4, RS6, M3, M4, M5 or C63. For the same money as a Renault 4. Now, should you choose the electric option, I have no words. Because I've just offered you alternatives that will blow your mind. So so there you have it. The long and the short of it is, this grant is a pile of shit. It's just there for job creation. It's going to generate some money for all the government quangos. It's going to do nothing for Asia because they've ruled them out of it all the way. And it'll do something for the Ford Puma, the Mini, the Renault and the Dacia. But not much, because that 3,000, those are four of the most discounted cars in Britain anyway. So your discount's going to be swallowed up by the dealer, and the manufacturer will simply get 10% of the value of the car back. So the last 12 minutes and 28 seconds of your life has been used up to tell you that this government grant is indeed just bollocks. Future my arse.